Welcome to The Explainer. Look, there's one massive question dominating the country right now. Is immigration in Ireland a net negative or a net positive?
Let's dive straight into the data. If you're an Irish working family feeling the pinch today, the reality is entirely front-loaded. We are looking at massive, immediate, short-term pressure on one side versus a delayed, slowly rising, long-term economic contribution on the other.
So we have to completely reframe the ledger here and move past the simple yes or no pub debate. To genuinely understand this, we've got to weigh those immediate short-term costs, like accommodation and income supports, directly against the deferred structural benefits that roll in later, like income tax, PRSI, and VAT. Let's look a bit closer at those front-loaded costs. Accommodation, income supports, administrative systems, the intense pressure on housing, and the strain on public services. We have to impartially validate the lived experience on the ground here. There's a sharp divide. For renters trying desperately to get a foot on the housing ladder, or families just trying to get a GP appointment, these costs show up incredibly quickly and absolutely dictate their day-to-day lives. And to be fair, there's a very practical reason for the delay on the flip side. Step 1, enter the workforce. Step 2, settle. Step 3, increase earnings. Economic contributions take time to materialize because people arriving simply need a minute to find their feet, secure a job, and start earning a proper wage. Which brings us to this incredibly resonant quote. Public perception often focuses on pressure because that's what people feel first. It is entirely likely that right now, in the short term, the costs are exceeding the contributions. If the public is frustrated, it's because that pressure is exactly what's greeting them in the front door every single morning. Right, the long-term payoff. Over time, with a consistently employed immigrant workforce, the whole dynamic shifts. They contribute heavily to income tax, PRSI, and VAT. They fill absolutely essential roles in the labor market. Now this means employers reap immediate benefits in filling staff shortages, which supports local Irish businesses. But families are often left waiting a bit longer for that broader economic dividend to actually trickle down to them. The crucial point here really comes down to demographics. Ireland, much like the rest of Europe, is facing a massive demographic time bomb. We are looking at a shrinking working-age population that will somehow have to support a rapidly growing proportion of retirees. A growing, tax-paying working-age population is absolutely crucial to keeping our public finances afloat in the coming decades. But here is the massive catch. This long-term dividend, it's not automatic. It relies entirely on integration. And by integration, the data means the crucial alignment of employment rates, income levels, education, and skills. It depends entirely on how well the state steps up and actually facilitates getting people into the right jobs. So it really comes down to two clear paths. If integration is strong, the long-term contributions absolutely outweigh the initial costs. But if integration is weak, will those initial costs just persist and drain the system? This proves that the final outcome isn't determined by immigration itself. It's determined by how well our system manages the people who arrive. Moving on to capacity under pressure. First up, housing. Look, immigration undoubtedly increases demand for housing. We all know that. But the core issue dictating the intense pressure on the Irish renter is housing supply. While the demand goes up, the pressure only persists if the state's housing supply completely fails to expand to meet it. And we can apply the exact same logic to our public services. Population growth naturally increases demand on our schools, our hospitals, our transport. But again, the strain only becomes unbearable when the system's capacity falls behind the population curve. So how do we fix it? It requires complete systemic alignment. First, housing supply simply has to grow. Second, public services must expand to meet the larger base. And third, the labor market integrates. To make immigration economically positive over time, the state needs all three of these moving in perfect harmony. Let's bring this right back to the lived experience at the kitchen table. Can you actually find a place to live? It's an incredibly stressful, rapid-fire reality for young professionals and renters on the ground right now. Can you access services? This is the everyday strain people face when they're just trying to get their sick child in to see a local GP or secure a place in the local school. And crucially, are your wages actually keeping up with your costs? Because if the answers to these three questions are negative, the whole system feels broken to the ordinary person, regardless of what some brilliant long-term economic projection says on a spreadsheet. So we really have to redefine the core debate here.
We need to move past the simple, shouting match argument of, is it good or bad? The real question we should be asking is the state system managing it effectively?
Because immigration doesn't just operate in a vacuum. Sure, it doesn't. It interacts directly with our housing policy, our physical infrastructure, our public spending, and our labor markets. All of these vital infrastructural pillars have to be sturdy enough to bear the weight.
Which brings us to the final tally. Impartially, based entirely on the data, here it is. It is a net cost in the short term, but it is a net benefit in the long term. The entire outcome depends on policy and execution. It's a matter of weathering those initial, highly visible, short-term costs to harvest the long-term structural benefits, assuming the state actually executes good policy. Because complex systems simply do not produce simple answers. And as the source material points out, trying to force this whole thing into a simple slogan or declaring everything sorted when it clearly isn't, well, that would feel right at home in an episode of Father Ted. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I'll leave you with this. The data shows the long-term prosperity is absolutely there for the taking, but is the Irish state actually capable of building the bridge to get us there?